Socialists care about economic equality. In fact, one way that people often think about the debate about capitalism and socialism is that socialists care more about equality than we do about freedom, and defenders of capitalism care more about freedom than they do about equality. But that's just wrong. Socialists object to rampant inequality precisely because we care about freedom. To see the point, we need to start by separating at least three different kinds of equality. One is moral and legal equality, the idea that every human being has the same innate importance and should have the same rights as every other human being. That's something that liberals believe, even libertarians say they believe that. Socialists certainly believe it. Another is equality in distribution, whether one person has a bigger share of society's resources than another. Finally, there's the whole question of equality or inequality in abilities. A common view is that it's ridiculous to think that we can ever have equality in distribution because we don't have equality in natural talents. Some people are going to have more than other people because some people are going to use their superior talents to earn more than other people. And who could object to that? Even Karl Marx says in the Critique of the Gotha program that if a society compensates workers on the basis of their contributions, some people are going to get a bigger share than others because, quote, one man is superior to another physically or mentally and supplies more labor in the same time. In fact, sounding a little bit like Ayn Rand, he says a couple sentences later that individuals are only individuals if they are unequal, presumably meaning unequal in their talents, unequal in how they live their lives, and so on. So, if even Marx acknowledged that much, why do socialists care about equality and distribution? First, let's make a distinction. We don't object to any inequality in distribution at all. Sometimes it might be necessary in any society to give some people more than others as an incentive. For example, if there's some job that no one wants to do, it might be totally reasonable for the citizens of a socialist society to collectively and democratically decide to attract applicants by giving the people who do that job a slightly greater share of society's resources. In fact, those collective and democratic decisions might very well lead to inequalities that would be the opposite of a very familiar kind of inequality that we have right now. Under capitalism, the people with the dirtiest, most unpleasant jobs, the people with so-called essential jobs, often tend to be paid less than people with the kind of jobs where you can just get sent home with an employer-provided laptop to stay safe during a pandemic. In a society where no one had to take essential jobs out of desperation, you'd have to compensate those workers more to incentivize taking more tedious or more dangerous work. Inequalities are also fine if they arise from different life choices made without unreasonable economic pressures forcing everyone's hand. If John earns more than Jake because Jake chooses to work less so he can have more time to spend with his family or more time to spend writing poetry, that's not necessarily objectionable. Inequalities that are actually an expression of freely undertaken choices without coercion aren't innately objectionable. The problem with free marketeers like Ayn Rand is that they think choices made under capitalism are meaningfully free. Socialists don't want some all-powerful bureaucracy making sure that no one ever has a little bit more like anyone else. When I think of this caricature of socialism, I often think about Robert De Niro's character Ace Rothstein in the movie Casino, where Rothstein storms into the kitchen of his casino to yell at the chef because some of the muffins have more blueberries in them than others. When he insists that there be exactly the same number of blueberries in every muffin, the chef asks, "Do you know how long that would take?" But that doesn't mean that we need to have CEOs who make 400 times the salary of an average worker. You don't get inequalities on that scale just from setting up socially necessary incentives. You don't get it from some people just working harder than others. You get it when most people have no realistic choice except to go to work for a company where they have no democratic input into setting up pay scales. In other words, that kind of inequality in distribution is something that you only get when you start with a severe inequality of power. And that brings us back to freedom. Because we think that every human being is equally important and equally deserves to have basic rights, we care about human freedom. The most important kind of freedom is freedom from domination. And when some people have dramatically smaller shares of society's resources than others, the have-nots have little choice in practice but to go to work for the haves at terms that are set by the haves. Contrast this to the kind of socialism that it's easiest to imagine coming about in even the relatively near future, a kind where markets still exist in some areas, but the division of society into workers and business owners has ended because some private companies have been nationalized and the rest have been reorganized as worker-controlled firms. Whatever pay scales exist in those firms almost certainly wouldn't be perfectly equal and that exactly as many blueberries in every muffin kind of way. There would doubtless still be differences in income. But you wouldn't have some people with the kind of wealth that Jeff Bezos has and some people scraping by like the workers in his warehouses. Under socialism, we wouldn't have a ruling class on top and an exploited class underneath. We'd have equal democratic citizenship extended into the economic sphere. And that's a kind of equality worth fighting for, if you care about freedom.